Hello friends, you may remember me from predicting that Trump was going to win in 2016, or that 2 or 3 years before Milei won in Argentina, I warned you that it was very likely that Milei it was going to continue to growing and that the politics, he didn't understand it. Well, today I'm coming to tell you that for me, in my opinion, as much as there are a lot of polls that are saying that Trump and Harris are evenly matched, just like they were saying that Biden and Trump were evenly matched, I think Trump is going to win by a wide margin. I don't know how much. If I can tell you 10 points or something similar. But for me, all the conditions are in place for him to win by a wide margin. And my arguments are that I see several things. On the one hand, I see that at a global level, there is a weariness of what is the woke culture and progressivism that has raised a lot of banners and has not really solved any problem, and in many cases it has made them worse. It can be seen as well in Argentina and in other parts of the world. There has started to be a more conservative wave as response to so many years of a preponderance of the woke culture, or what is referred to as the cancellation culture, for some time. And it is something that I always said, when you start to cancel and you start to prohibit in some way some kind of thought, it's going to explode somewhere. And in the US it was exploded culturally in the beginning, where we see that a lot of influencers and a lot of what you see in the conversations on social media totally changed what it was a few years ago. You can see it as a resurgence of conservatism. Even within trends, marketing trends like tradwives, there was a very paradigmatic episode. The beer company Bad Light made a new campaign linked to what was LGBT with a trans influencer and made a whole series of new advertisements with this influencer, which generated great indignation because it was not the public that consumed Bad Light. This led to a boycott and the company lost millions and millions of dollars, generated a great controversy. Even nowadays, they had to hire a comedian called Shane Gillis, who had just been cancelled from Saturday Night Live for having made some tweets of some jokes, I think homophobic and so on, and he had been cancelled even before he performed on the show. And you look at the change in the swell, where now this person, Bad Light, uses it to rescue his brand. On the other hand, I think that pandemic was not free to any society. In the case of the American society, it seems to me that for a large part of them, it is clear that democratic institutions, many of them are co-opted by economic powers, and they believe that today's Democrats are accomplices. It seems to me that the Democrats are not going to get off scot-free by having taken Biden, without having allowed a primary, knowing that he was super senile because we saw him during the 4 years of his presidency and a little bit before that as well. That they exposed him in a strange super early debate, that they did it with Trump, where it even looked like they betray him to be exposed, then handpicked Kamala Harris without leaving a primary, without anyone voting for her. The same guys that tell you that democracy is in danger are electing a person they handpicked as their candidate. Plus, Kamala Harris is a lousy candidate. She already tried to run for president. In the last elections and in a debate with Tulsi Gabbard, she was destroyed because she was a disaster as an official. And she has a few cases of putting people in jail. A lot of people of color for smoking a joint and putting them in jail for smoking a joint and putting them in there just to show certain winning percentages of even, there are allegations that he withheld evidence of people who were innocent in order to keep them in prison and maintain those winning percentages. She is really an awful person. And in that debate, she looked very, very bad and ended up with Biden running for president and beating Trump. You also have that in many Democratic states in the US, like in California, they've taken a lot of regulations and have made a lot of very, very bizarre laws, and in many situations have led to a crisis of insecurity and people on the street and people with mental health and drug addiction problems to an unbelievable extreme, which has led to a mass exodus from many of these states to others. Some will tell you that it is because of high taxes, but many of them say it is because of the great insecurity they suffer from. They also have the problem of inflation. With all the money that the US issued during the pandemic, they also did not raise salaries, and the people were not used to these ups and downs as we are here in Argentina. There is a lot of criticism about inflation in the US, and it is one of Trump's hobby horses. There is also the war crises in the world, and many people perceive Democrats as throwing wood on the fire all the time to sustain those conflicts, and that they do nothing to end them, and that they even do business. A lot of things that came up in previous campaigns that Trump lost, such as the scandals with Biden's son, have ended up being proven to be true. It was even proven a few days ago by Mark Zuckerberg that the state forced them to censor information during the pandemics, and that this time they were not going to do it. What I'm saying is that if the last election, Trump already being demonized with the pandemic on top of it, he narrowly lost. With all of this, having had 4 years to change the narrative of how a lot of the causes that they are generating against Trump it seems that for many people they are politically persecuting him. Also, the assassination attempt on Trump's life generated for a large part of the population, it humanized him, and for another part of the population that already loved him, it turned him into something iconic. That is to say, he has a kind of moment. In addition to the debate that destroyed Biden, finally in this last stretch of the campaign, and he's doing some incredible things that are bringing Democrats together and being in some ways a national unity alliance for many. Adding him to Bobby Kennedy to Tulsi Gabbard, the one I was telling you about who destroyed her, was a Democrat too, and she destroyed Kamala in the debate. And Bobby Kennedy, who was a third-way candidate who ended up joining Trump, because he thought he got more votes from Trump than he did from Biden or Kamala Harris, and he thinks she is the worst thing that can happen to American democracy. Kennedy's life was made impossible for him so that he could not run as an independent by the same Democrats who would not let him run within a primary that they did not allow. It's something that added a lot to Trump, because Trump has always been seen as someone superfluous and superficial, like he is in some ways for many a danger to the institutions. But so much so that both Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard give Trump a lift that he did not have on many issues that are very important to another type of electorate. More independent electorate, or maybe they are more on the side of the Democrats that have to do with the issue of wars. Also all that had to do with the controversies of the pharmaceutical industry during the pandemic. And how many times US citizens believe that between the pharmaceutical and food industry and the processed food industry are intoxicating and making their population chronically ill with diseases. And this is something that Kennedy has been working on for a long time. And as an environmental lawyer, he has built a reputation for himself. Then in this alliance, he is going to put him in a place to take charge of those jobs, let's say, that are also important for the world. Because whatever the US does in terms of legislation on pharmaceuticals and food, they end up being used as models in the rest of the world. In addition, now in the last few days, Trump has also announced that Elon Musk is joining this alliance, and that he would give him a possible place in the cabinet as a kind of auditor of the state to see all the things that are wasted and to reduce public spending, because they are talking like here that the US cannot continue with the fiscal deficit it has and spending the way they do, and that Elon Musk is not only an icon as a tech entrepreneur loved and hated by many, but he has become a kind of conservative icon for a lot of people in the world, which also adds to this alliance that Trump is generating. On the other hand, Harris is proposing is practically nothing. Defends inflation. He defends Democrat policies in states that are totally bizarre, and now they are celebrating that they are being banked by Dick Cheney, a Republican of, if you remember, from the Bush era, who was practically the one to blame of attacking Afghanistan, Iraq, and all the disasters that were made in that era after the fall of the Twin Towers, who passed that Patriot Act where they could detain you, send you to Guantanamo, and they didn't even have to initiate a court case. So I think that there are a lot of these indications that make me think that there is going to be a majority that is going to lean towards Trump. Because of all of this, I think it makes him a better candidate for the majority of the people, and that Kamala Harris has nothing to show for it. They made a lousy government and proposed nothing. That's why for me, no matter how much the polls say, he is more or less the same. Whatever they tell you, I think that Trump is going to win by a good margin. I don't know if it's a 10-point margin. I don't know if it will be 10 points, but something close. So well, friends, we will find out in November if I was right or not.